I want to talk about building a marketing plan with budget and some goals and strategy, and this is a very, very simplified version of the process we typically do, but it's usually enough to get people started. I'm also going to share with you a spreadsheet for building a marketing plan, an annual marketing plan with budget and people and channels, which I'm going to send you, as well as the presentation. You're going to get all the presentations, just a reminder, so you don't need to type anything. Okay, cool. So marketing strategy. As someone who works with a lot of smaller startups, I don't necessarily love the word strategy. It's like a big word, and it's not, tachlis, yalla. The way I think about strategy is how do we deploy the resources we do have, which is money and people, in the best way through marketing channels and campaigns to get to the goals that we set for ourselves. So let's start with goals. So in marketing, there are so many different KPIs and metrics and numbers you can measure. If you were to choose just one metric to focus on. So if you were the head of marketing and you want to go to your CEO and say, this week or month or quarter, we hit X things, what would X be? What's like the one KPI? Revenue?
Mm-hmm. Paying customers.
Okay.
Conversion rate.
Okay.
I think it very much depends on the stage of the company, because if you start in day one paying customers,
You don't have any paying customers.
then you're in 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, no progress.
Yeah.
But you probably did a lot of progress in your subscribers or awareness.
We invented a KPI
Mm-hmm.
to normalize conversions on e-commerce websites.
Uh-huh.
And it's basically, instead of having a conversion rate, which is basically very different, you probably know, like a conversion rate on couches, let's say, it's much lower than conversion rates on cheap products.
Mm-hmm.
So then you normalize it by just dividing the net revenue per number of views.
Okay.
So then you consider the margin, the profit margin of the specific product, whatever product that is. And then you know how much money you make per view, literally. So then you're able to compare your sales of couches, for example, versus your sales of, pillows, and you're able to know, should I market my couches or my pillows?
Cool. What else? All right. So like you said, I think I heard many different KPIs out of this. So this is, it can't be a marketing workshop without a funnel. So here's the funnel. On the marketing side, you said we can measure things like traffic. I don't think anyone said leads, but that's sometimes popular. Sometimes you hear about MQL and SQL. I'm still not sure what these mean. Then in sales, we talked about new paying customers or revenue. And of course, it totally always depends. The metric that we usually focus on with the companies we work with, which are companies that have some traction and some product market fit and some version of this funnel that's already functioning, is what we call, we in Salesforce, sales opportunity. So that's essentially the handoff between marketing and sales. And we typically define it as a meeting or call on the calendar with the right person at the right company, which we'll get to in a minute. But essentially, like a few of you said here, I really like the idea of being as close to revenue as possible. As a marketeer, measuring just traffic to the website, it's a good proxy, but at the end of the day, I want this traffic to be relevant, and I want it to convert to deals, like close-won deals and paying customers and revenue. So being here, creating meetings for the sales team with relevant people is a metric that's still very much under my control as the marketing team. And it's the closest to revenue I'm going to get before starting the sales process, where I have less control over it. again, this is very simplistic and it's also our context. Some companies are much earlier, so they're not even getting to sales opportunities. They're just not there because nobody's taking meetings with them. Some companies, they already they won the entire market and now it's all about upsells. So it varies, but that's what we usually do with seed or Series A startups. Cool. Sorry. Okay, and then, so now we have our goal, and I'm going to show you later how to get to a numerical value for the number of sales opportunities you want to create. Then you want to start thinking about, okay, I have a marketing budget, which marketing channels am I going to use, and which campaigns I'm going to use in these channels to hit my goals. So I wanted to ask you which channels you guys know, but we don't have a ton of time and it's pretty obvious, but there are so many channels, right? We already talked about a few, like webinars and content and digital marketing and conferences and PR and so on and so forth, right? So how do you choose, and which factors in your company or product or environment do you think will matter most when you choose a channel strategy? So which factors will determine whether you choose email marketing as your #1 channel versus conferences? Budget, yes.
Your audience. Audience.
Meaning?
Who's your audience? Who are you
Customers.
targeting?
Okay.
Resources.
Yep, people and
Basically, it's just the effectivity of each and every channel. I mean, if you're doing paid and your funnel is great with paid marketing, keep on doing that. If you have a positive ROI from
Yep.
there, and it's a little bit time consuming.
Yep.
But if you can do it by phone and get paid customer, do the phone call and
Right.
do the marketing.
right, so the numbers need to align, your
Yeah.
cost of acquisition, your
I mean,
revenue.
The only thing that limited is your time
Mhm.
and your budget.
Right.
That's it. Other than that, all the channels are just open. So that's the only thing you need to invest.
Yep. So I agree with all of that, and I noted here some of the factors that impact your channel strategy, like you said, budget, and your target audience, and your goals, and so on. Out of these factors, which one do you think is the most important? If you change that one, it will completely change your channel mix. It's a bit of a trick question. It's not intuitive, I don't think, but maybe someone want to guess.
You have to buy a persona.
How so?
Because you market to the right person, you need to see where they're looking for the information. This is the only question, right? At the end of the day, you can do a lot of buzz, but if no one reads it, so there's nothing about it. So the target persona, how we consume the data,
Mm-hmm.
this is the most important.
I also think that as your company changes, all the variables change as well.
Yeah.
Everything is kind of interdependent. So if your budget increases, you have new strategy
Right.
and new goals.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they both matter. What I took on to thinking is a quote by this guy. Do you know who this guy is? So this is Jason Lemkin. He writes a blog called SaaStr. You should read it if you don't. It's the best SaaS sales and marketing material in the world. Anyway, he claims that everything, including sales and marketing, is kind of the same thing if the ACV, so the annual contract value, is the same. Meaning that if you were selling a product where the average value, average deal size is $100K, so many things are going to be similar. Like if you were selling whatever, like cyber software versus like marketing analytics software, despite the fact it's a completely different buyer personas and industries and maybe company sizes, so many of your marketing and sales tactics are going to be similar because of the price point. That's his argument, and I think there's a lot of merit to it. So, for example, if your sales cycle is long, then that typically means that your average contract size is high, right? Like people are buying something expensive, so the sales cycle takes a long time, right? If you're selling to senior people and you have a lot of multiple stakeholders in the process, typically that means that it's a low or high ACV.
High.
Right. If your cost of acquisition needs to be low, that means that the ACV is low. If your sales team strategy is inside sales or self-service, right, that also maps to low. If you're using account-based marketing, so mapping, right, high ACV. Conferences, right. So you can see that without even knowing the industry or the size of the company, you kind of, once you know that, you immediately kind of know a lot of things about your marketing and sales strategy, right? Again, it's simplifying, and like you said, you definitely need to know your target persona, because if they never go to conferences, then you're not going to go to conferences even if you have high ACV and so on. But it's a really useful variable to arrange your marketing and sales strategy around. Like if your ACV is low, unless you don't care about being profitable like ever, you don't want your CAC to be too high.
What is account-based marketing? When you say account-based marketing,
Yeah, so essentially it's a bit of a buzzword, but it means that you define your target market. Say you map the 200 companies that are relevant buyer, you build the list, then you find relevant people within these companies and you target them specifically. So it's like very targeted. And account means essentially a company. So each company on the list is like a big potential buyer for you, and you're gonna go after them. Sometimes for like years chasing the same account. Yeah, stalking is another way to put it. So this was an exercise I thought we'd do if we had time. We don't have a ton of time, but essentially target persona is really important. And the first thing we do when we start working with a company, and the first thing I would do as like a new marketing person, is understand our buyer persona, both like demographically and also like personality wise. So basic questions like which industry we're selling into, what company size, where are they located, what does this person do, which team they're on, how senior they are. So this is an example, and this is a specific example of a person who was the target persona for Castora, the marketing analytics company. So she's a senior e-commerce and marketing manager. She's a VP. She's out in the West Coast, and she works for a very big retailer, Gymboree. And sometimes it helps to actually find a few concrete examples on LinkedIn of your buyer persona. Then you can look at things like where does she go to school, and sometimes you can see which like LinkedIn pages she follows and which conferences she attends and so on. And that, I assume, is an exercise that most people are familiar with. Once you know the persona, then I really like this quote, party where your buyer parties. So you essentially want to be there. You want to be where they are. So what do they read? Which conferences do they go to? Which like influencers do they listen to or read? What are the questions that keep them up at night? And what do you think are some ways for us to find out answers to these questions? Sorry,
Research.
research.
Social media.
Yep,
Talk
more
to them.
stalking. Sorry,
Talk to them.
yeah, interviews.
Surveys, interviews.
Yeah,
We try to pretend you are them. If I were her, what would be I would be interested in?
yeah. Yeah, so even as small startups, you know, if we have customers, which are obviously our target persona by definition, so interviewing them is an amazing way to get to know them and also to talk to them about our product and so on. Doing competitive analysis, so seeing what our competitors are doing when they're talking to them. Tons of like industry reading and listening. You basically need to subscribe to all of the industry publications in your space and read it. Also something that I found really useful, especially for like Israeli startups, asking other companies in your space that are not competitive. So if I was selling to big retailers, which other startups can I talk to about, you know, good conferences to attend? Because there are 50 different conferences in e-commerce marketing. How do I know, like, from Israel, which big conference in the US should I attend? It's like a ton of money and time. I can
Startup
just,
is relevant.
sorry?
When you start up, that's what they do.
I
Find
bet.
the best conference to go.
Yeah, so that's a good tip. What are they called?
Config.
Cool. Okay. But just like asking a startup that's like a couple of years ahead of you and being like, oh, we're thinking about, you know, these two conferences, which one do you recommend? And usually people are like super helpful. Okay, cool. Budget, I can talk for like an hour just about budget, but a lot of people ask, okay, how do I determine what my marketing budget should be? There are a few ways. I can tell you about what I know. I'm happy to hear your guys' experience. So a lot of times the company CEO would be like, okay, the company's operating budget for next year is $10 million, and I'm dividing it the following way between like R&D, success, marketing, sales, and here's your number, you have $2 million, and go for it. So this is top down, and it is what it is. This also depends, of course, if the company wants to be profitable and so on. Another way is you have goals. So the company has revenue goals. You can back into the number of sales opportunities that on the marketing side you want to create. And then you can go bottom up. So I want to go to this conference. It will get me 20 sales opportunities and cost me 100K. I want to do a webinar. That's the cost. I want to hire 2 people. And then bottom up, summarize all of these costs and get to my number and hope that that aligns with the top-down number. Another way that's also pretty top-down, okay, the company needs to generate $10 million new revenue next year. So my marketing budget is going to be X% of that. And X can range from like 20 to 100%. And it's really depends, again, on the company's appetite for like being profitable and spending on R&D and so on. Cool, so now I want to show you a spreadsheet that puts it all together. If you're like a spreadsheet person, you're kind of gonna laugh at me because it's very simplistic. But we actually use slightly more complex variations of it, and it's a good starting point. And you're gonna get it. I'm gonna share it with all of you.
No one can see it.
Hmm?
No one can see it at this size.
Do you wanna? Can you see
it
it?
in the back?
Okay. Cool. Do you mind? Okay, so essentially what we want to do here is we want to build an annual marketing plan. So the company has some goals. We want to move from $1 million in ARR into $2 million, so basically double. And our ACV, our average contract value, is 50K, and our close rate is 15%. These are all assumptions or like things that we're given. So these are simply calculations. We need to close 20 new deals. In the first half of the year, let's say we need to close 10. That means that with our 15% close rate, we need 133 new sales opportunities, right? 15% are going to close, which is the 10 that we need to, sorry, the 20 we need in 2018, and then we break it down by half, quarter, and month. Great. Then we think bottom up, okay, what are the marketing channels we want to deploy and what marketing campaigns we're going to have. This is super qualitative, right? I write down what things we're going to do. So in content world, we're going to have a white paper, then an ebook and a case study, and we're going to distribute them with email and on our website and so on. Then every other month, we're going to do one webinar. Every month, we're going to do 2 newsletters. Conferences, we're going to attend a big conference in March and another one in May. And we're going to do prospecting and email marketing in an ongoing way. Then I move over to quantifying what I think these efforts are going to yield. And this is, you know, an art and a science. I essentially predict how many sales opportunities each initiative or marketing campaign or channel are going to produce. And this can be based on historical figures, it can be based on industry benchmarks, maybe I did some experiments, or maybe I'm just guessing at this point, and I'm gonna update and refine and reforecast as some of these actually happen. So for example, you can see that I think from big conference in March, I'm gonna get 10 new sales opportunities. And from webinars, I think that each webinar is gonna bring me 3 new sales opportunities, right? So it's very simple. It might be completely off base, but it's a framework to get started on. And then come February, once I did the first webinar, I can see, okay, how many did it actually bring in? Was it like 1? Was it 10? I can update the forecast and even like reforecast. I can be like, oh, it brought in 10, so maybe April and June, I'm gonna up it to 6, right? Then sum it all up, and I can see that at the end of the first half, I'm with 72 opportunities, which is almost 11 deals, which conveniently, that's exactly the number of deals I need to close in H1. Again, it's also very simple because it assumes that everything that opens in H1 closes in H1. I'm sure you know that's not always the case, but again, it's just the mechanics. Then budget-wise, take the initiatives I mapped and assign a budget figure for each one. So let's look at conferences because that's easiest. Big conference in March, I'm gonna invest 15 grand. Small conference in May, 5K. What else? Webinars. Each webinar is going to cost me $300 for like software and so on. And I also put in headcount because I believe that headcount should be part of your marketing costs. Some companies don't include that. Some companies have like a headcount budget in the P&L and they don't include it in your customer acquisition cost. Some companies include sales costs in the customer acquisition cost. As a head of marketing, I want to include my headcount because headcount is pretty much equivalent to money. You know, if you don't hire a person, maybe you use an agency, but it's just like at the end of the day, we're spending money on marketing. So anyway, I put 8K a month. Which can be a person or 2 people, depends on where you are and what type of people. And we get to, at the end of the first half of the year, we spent 100K on marketing, which translates, if we divide it by the number of deals that we closed, it's about 9K CAC or customer acquisition cost, which if you remember that our deal size was 50K, then spending 9K to acquire a customer is pretty good. Again, that's just on marketing. I mean, we don't know how much money the sales guys got and Obviously, there are other expenses as well, R&D and success, but just from a marketing standpoint, these are actually, it's like almost 5x ROI. It's not bad. And it's an Excel, so as I always say, the Excel you can make everything happen in Excel. Like, it's just numbers, then reality hits. It's very different. But still, you want to have a working plan. You want to go with this to your CEO and say, I want 20 more K because I want to do 2 more conferences because I think it can bring 4 more opportunities and 1 more deal, right? You want to build something that makes sense logically and where the numbers just make sense.